it's usually 50-50 as to how people are going to pronounce my last name. So it could be Weibil, could be Wobbles. It's just, it is what it is. And especially when you have the first name Ricky. It was so hard to get dates in high school and college. That terrible song of Ricky Don't Lose Her Number pretty much was completely devastating. So, but successfully, I somehow found a great woman, and she married me. So, I guess even the blind squirrel is lucky too. All right. So, how many of you are here to really dive deep into hand counting? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you would like a light survey into hand counting and kind of figure out what's happening with Trump's executive order that he kind of put out in March? Raise your hands. Okay, so we got a good mix. So we'll try and balance it here and not make it too dry. A little bit about myself. I originally was born and raised in Minnesota and was very active politically. This is all of the stats about me. That's just a lot of garbage. That's really, really boring. I'm a nerd. You can tell that by the glasses, you know, the superhero type stuff. I was active politically. I'm still active politically. When we moved from Minnesota to South Dakota, we followed my son, who went to South Dakota State University in 2016. We followed him and moved to South Dakota in 2018. And my wife wanted me out of politics. Then COVID hit. And then my wife was like, go get him. So I'm back in it, and I'm one of the rare individuals that has served public office in 2 separate states. I was on the city council for the city of St. Bonifacius in western Hennepin County in the state of Minnesota, and I'm currently a city council member in my hometown of Elkton, South Dakota, currently where I serve. And that's a little bit of a joke too. People will ask me, like, don't you trust the machines? No, I don't. They're insecure, and the people who are running them are actually incompetent. They haven't been trained properly. I've tried to work with vendors to make them more secure, and I've tried to work with officials and legislators to actually increase the testing threshold of the equipment. And I was invited out to Wyoming to kind of prove the case. And Wyoming has really good laws that if you don't do the test correctly, it's a felony. And their laws actually specifically state you will test all ballot styles. In every state, there's a minimum of 2. So like in your state, you have a standard ballot, like you see in the green and red sheets. And then there's an express vote ballot, which is for disability voters. We'll take a quick moment. People, go ahead and check your phones. It might be an Amber Alert, I'm guessing. So if you recognize that vehicle, go ahead and, is that what it is? Okay. Don't know? All right. So what was interesting about Wyoming, I get invited out there and we start investigating, do they actually follow the law where it requires testing of all the ballot styles, which is a minimum of 2, the standard ballot, and then the barcoded ballot that disability users go up to the express vote machine, use the touchscreen, and then it prints out a smaller ballot card that has barcodes on it that the tabulator then reads. Well, what was interesting is every candidate must have a vote, so logically that means no candidate could have 0 because that's not a vote. And then every candidate within a race has to have a unique number from others on the test deck. Well, we would find lots of them that would have 0s or just 1s across the boards. And that's a felony. And the beauty of Wyoming is they have no statute of limitations on felonies. So that's why we wanted to go through that. We worked with the Secretary of State, alerted him of the issues that all 23 of 23 counties failed. So he actually published a notice on his website directing all of the clerks to redo their test decks. Not all of them did. But we also found out that the law doesn't quite work to protect our elections. So that was during the primary of 2024. We take the Laramie County clerk to court to force her to redo the logic and accuracy test. She drags her feet. She's one of the folks that sits on the United States Election Assistance Commission representing her state. So each state gets 2 representatives. So that means she's one of the top 100 election officials out of the over 3,500 across the United States. So if that's where we're at, where are the rest of the election officials? And she's also somebody that has gone into other countries to run their elections on behalf of the UN. That should send shivers. So that's where I have some trust issues, because I have facts to back it up. Okay? So that compelled me to create a couple of organizations. The first one was Midwest Swamp Watch. Midwest Swamp Watch allows me to kind of be like a investigator slash media personality where I can collect the evidence, keep people safe who bring me evidence, and be able to disclose it under the freedom of the press, right? So I can go after bad actors publicly. Then I created a nonprofit called the U.S. Council on Accurate and Secure Elections. That nonprofit goes in and actually analyzes the security of election equipment, and we review all of the security patches and we publish where they're at from the engineering change orders from the United States Election Assistance Commission. We actually developed this hand count process through there that we're going to showcase today. We also looked at how to do better logic and accuracy testing, and we have that published at US Case to help out election officials. Because it's commonplace that you guys will invite speakers and they'll identify the problem and we'll get all excited, but they lack a solution. So if we don't use the machines, what do we do? And is there anything better than what we used to do before the machines? And it was interesting to go back and look at Minnesota's election laws, your election laws, Wyoming's election laws, New York's, Florida's, and see how they actually did hand counting in the past. It was terrible. No wonder why they went to the machines. It was almost like it was designed over time to make it so complicated and cumbersome that nobody actually had an open heart and said, let's just study how to do this. So we did that as Midwest Swamp Watch and US Case. We actually tried all sorts of different ways, looked at how state laws had it from the 1930s and followed how they did it. And then we said, let's just start over with a group of people who've never hand counted before, and let's just see what they would do naturally. Then let's design some sheets in different ways and see what works. And then let's listen to the feedback. Make the font bigger, make the boxes bigger, do it this way, instead of daubing, instead of circling, instead of this. Can we do slashes instead of just doing little tallies with slashes like in groups of fives? What are other ways that we can do it efficiently to reduce time, but also if there's observers, to make it transparent so that they can see what's going on? So we learned a lot by reading the statutes, by trying this, making mistakes, and we have binders and binders of different ways that we developed, and we brought it back to the people to go head to head using the different styles, and then we eventually narrowed it down. Then in 2023, we started competing against other states that were developing hand counting systems, and we were winning. Then this year, along with Election Gold Standards that I'm part of, we actually hosted the first nationwide hand count symposium in Dallas, Texas this year. And so we went against the Dallas Count 65, the Dallas or Texas hand count system, and a couple of others, and we had ours out there as well. They all had their strengths and weaknesses, and the beauty was that we were able to learn from each other so we could all upgrade our processes. And some of the hand counting methods have now been solidified as disaster recovery plans for some of the states, being used as their post-election audit of the machines, and then others have been codified into law and approved by their Secretary of States, like the Tally 66 out of Dallas County, Texas. And so we've come a long ways through all of this. And so there are activists out there who are doing good work across the country. Linda Rance is another one that works under Cause of America with Mike Lindell. and she developed a system for the state of Missouri. Hers is more of a daubing method. And so there's pluses and minuses, but the reality is you now have the information to say there are multiple ways to do hand counting that people have developed across the United States that you can cherry pick different styles to fit what you guys want to do and what your capabilities are. And so that's the beauty of it. So I'm not saying we're the only ones out there, but what I'm saying is that ours out there is completely open source, that the instructions are basically one page at uscase.org. The sheets, the tally sheets that you see, those are actually in an Excel document that you can download and re-edit. So there's no software to buy. Your counties and cities already have Microsoft Excel. So, and you even have it that you could even use it during a post-election audit, print out the sheets, and you could go sit there and listen to the election judges as they're calling out the names, and you can basically audit them live. So this is more tools in the tool belt that we've never really had before. So taking a step back, we have the March 25th executive order by Donald Trump. This won't be the only one, but this really kind of set kind of the stake in the ground, because we've heard of the issues over the years, like Peter Behringer of your state, who's been investigating the voter rolls of Wisconsin. We've heard the stories that you have more voters than population, more voters than qualified voters, a ton of duplicates, a ton of dead voters, all of the stuff that Peter has investigated and brought to light. Now the Department of Justice has been reviewing these things. And so we see that in there's a proof of citizenship requirements. The Department of Justice, along with Homeland Security, are reviewing the voter rolls. So Homeland Security, for the states that adopted Real ID earlier, they're comparing those Real ID registrations with the voter rolls to validate that those are real people. Because you get corrupt states that say, we'll go ahead and give driver's licenses to illegals and resident aliens. And unfortunately, because of a 1993 motor voter bill, NVRA, sometimes by default, when somebody is given a driver's license, they're automatically registered at the Secretary of State's office because of the way that law is written. And I even learned in my own state, this is how disgusting it is. Somebody goes into the DMV, they get registered to vote, the DMV sends the information to the Secretary of State's office, the Secretary of State's office puts it into a queue for the auditor to approve. But what's interesting is that even though the registrant for motor vehicles brought in source documents as to whether or not they were legal or not, the systems in South Dakota and most states, the auditor over here approving it actually doesn't have the ability to see the original source documents. So they're just approving them en masse. And many of the decisions of the Secretary of State's over the years has been, just assume that they're all good to go, you're not to make the decision. Well, that's incorrect, because it is the auditors that are supposed to determine the authenticity of each voter registration. And when they don't have the tools, like in South Dakota, and our activist group actually approached the Department of Transportation, Public Safety, and said, is there anything that we can do? We didn't realize how willing they were to work with the Secretary of State, but have never been approached over the years. That blew us away. They actually sat down at the table with us as activists and worked with us to start implementing the changes for September of this year. And we had that conversation in February. Because nobody had asked, it wasn't getting done. Then the other thing that Trump is trying to do is require all absentee ballots be received by Election Day. We have states like Minnesota, California, that will receive absentee ballots after Election Day, as long as they're postmarked on Election Day, anywhere from 3 days, 7 days, or 9 days after the election, which is kind of funny because this little tricky secret is that, the little postmark stamp, that's easy to forge. And you could also at, 11:30, after most election results have already been released, go ahead and go to the airport and put a bunch of ballots in to get the postmark in. And then all of a sudden when those ballots come in, oh, shucks, you didn't quite win because these absentee ballots came in. Kind of like what we saw during the 2024 election with the late results in California, where all of a sudden a bunch of congressional seats were lost. Then comes the biggie. The United States Election Assistance Commission had already approved the voluntary voting system guidelines as a standard back in 2023. But there wasn't a voting system that had been approved yet. And it wasn't until recently that one finally crossed the finish line. It has better security, it has better management, it has better oversight. But why aren't the vendors rushing towards this? Trump, even in the executive order, allows the EAC, go ahead and review existing systems, and if you think that they qualify, bless them. So far that hasn't happened. So the existing ones are speaking volumes that they wouldn't qualify. Then there was questions about federal funding of elections as well. He can't do that in the executive order, but he's at least saying, what do we need to do to basically make sure that our elections are going to be where we need them to be? So then within a month, we get an injunction in the U.S. District Court of Washington, D.C., and it basically says, well, the EAC really can't take action on any of this. So the left went in and sued to basically blockade this. And they also started suing other states that in their legislative year, like Wyoming and South Dakota. They went after Wyoming first, that required voter ID while voting. They lost. So luckily the RNC and Chuck Gray were able to lead that fight and win. We had a different bill in South Dakota to where we created a split because we've had so much election fraud with the RVers that we have people that come and try to do one-day residency in South Dakota for tax avoidance. And so, like, for example, we have this one address that has 15,000 registered voters. We have this little town of Amery that the U.S. Census recognizes that only has 465 people, but at one house there's 1,400 registered voters. They call them these PMBs, so these private mailboxes. And so people were registering to vote there, and we identified voter fraud in the 2022 election where people were intercepting those ballots and voting for the recreational marijuana in the 2020 election. And so it passed, but then Kristi Noem sued that whole petition, and the courts threw out that vote, and then they came back and forced a revote in 2022 for recreational, this time because of the actions that we took against the PMBers to validate whether or not they were there or not, and plus also sending chase mail and getting all these bounce backs that, oh, they don't live there anymore or they're not receiving the mail anymore, but yet they're sending in absentee ballots. We were able to challenge that, and the votes drop, and now all of a sudden recreational marijuana doesn't pass. So when they say that we don't have evidence in South Dakota that we're just, Trump won the state, so what was the big deal? You guys are just a bunch of election deniers. No, it wasn't just the top of the ballot. We knew about this issue too. Then other groups have filed into that same case where they're basically trying to destroy the requirement for voter ID. So we have all these different minority groups, and I'm just going to flat out say so that people don't think I'm a racist, I'm actually Hispanic. So that's the end of that. Your discrimination card has been declined. Try to use another form of argument. So we'll just cut that off at the knees right out of the gate. Then that lawsuit also named the Secretary of Defense because they wanted to make sure that he didn't have a role in checking his voter registrations, but then also Pam Bondi and then also the EAC, which they were basically saying you can't take any actions at all. But we've actually seen the courts rule in Trump's favor in regards to this, and now we're seeing prosecutions by Pam Bondi regarding election fraud, and we're seeing Department of Justice action in multiple states of, we want to review your voter rolls, here's some of the prosecutions on some of the fake voters. There was just another case in Minnesota where two people out of Nevada who registered over 500 fake voters during the 2018 through 2020 process during that time period. And so they pled guilty. Then the Department of Justice goes to Steve Simon, the Secretary of State of Minnesota. Why is this important? Asterisk. He's actually also the head of the National Association of Secretary of States. He's a Democrat. Even though the Republicans have a majority of the vote, for whatever reason, Steve Simon is refusing to hand over the voter rolls over to the Department of Justice. Not to worry. We handed over the copies that we've been collecting ever since 2005 to give the Department of Justice a head start. So part of the things that we have to look at when we look at the state voter registration list is, are they actually reviewing all the data? It was actually interesting working with Chuck Gray and asking him a basic question. Have you ever requested the data from Homeland Security so that you can actually validate who the actual US citizens are? He didn't know that that list was available. This executive order requires Homeland Security share it with each of the secretaries of states for free at any time. So this is something that you want to have a conversation with your state board of elections to find out if they're actually doing that, because you don't officially have a Secretary of State. The other part is Wisconsin. One of the main voter systems that you have is actually a complete fraud. You adopted two systems, kind of ES&S lied to you. And it's right on your own State Board of Elections website. It says that both 6060 and 6070 were federally accredited and tested. 6060 was tested through the EAC and given an actual certificate. That certificate will look like this. 6070 doesn't have one like this. 6070 has modems. Modems are not approved by the United States Election Assistance Commission. Okay? So this is where it is so important. Then, to top it all off, I learned that ES&S is now stopping the production of the DS200s. So that means, as an early preview, the DS200s will not be certified under the 2.0 program. You'll have to buy new equipment, the DS300s, in order to be compliant. But what's interesting is that the DS300s have one hardware model. That means they all have modems on them. Or they have the optional USB thumb drive, that's a 5G modem, that can connect. So there's some questions that have to be answered by ES&S as to how do they protect the systems from the modems not being activated. For the DS200s, they were supposed to remove a little software program called Modem Runner. There hasn't been that disclosure yet for VVSG 2.0. They have not come forward as to how they're going to address it. So here are some of the approved systems that you guys have in your state. So you have Clear Ballot that has Clear Vote 1.4, 2.0, and 2.3. 2.3 is the latest version out there, but what's disgusting is that you as a county could go buy Clear Vote 1.4 and go ahead and run Windows 7. Great job. Not secure at all. Then when you get into Dominion voting systems, you still have the old carryover of the 414D and the 414DS, still Windows 7, approved for use in your state. Your state board of elections hasn't decertified that equipment. Then You have the 5.5C and the 5.5 CS. The CS indicates modems.
And those are not approved by the EAC either, right?
Correct. And your state statutes, actually, you guys have a huge error in them. You don't refer to the EAC as a requirement for system approval. You don't even refer to the voluntary voting system guidelines and make it statutorily required for voting systems. Your state statute refer to an organization that no longer exists. It was the National Association of Auditors and County Officials that used to do certifications back in the 90s. So your laws are so broken that you're just kind of floating out there and playing Russian roulette with the approvals, and it's all fakery. And so that allows the voting system manufacturers to prey on you and take advantage of you guys.
Why or how do they take advantage of things like this?
Say again?
How do manufacturers take advantage of us with what? Manufacturing defective machines? I don't get it.
Yes, they're manufacturing defective machines without the proper oversight of your state or the EAC. You are actually buying systems that the EAC has never reviewed.
But manufacturers are doing this purposely, are you saying?
Correct, they are. Because they can make money on it. This is a billion-dollar industry. That's why they're doing it, because they can and they have. Your state's an example, and so is Minnesota.
How do you know this?
It's easy. It's in plain sight. The very fact that your state is advertising that they have approved ES&S 6070 as part of a voting system that's approved, you can go to the EAC's website and see that 6070 does not exist as a certified system. Even though your own State Board of Elections says that this system was approved federally, that's false. There's no documentation that is publicly available on the EAC's website. Also, when you go to the state of Minnesota's website and you look at their 6070 system, they don't have a federal certificate. It is issued by the Secretary of State of Minnesota, and he admits that they didn't actually test the modems, and it's not required for certification. He just makes up the rule. Yep, go ahead.
Why do we follow through that they don't even have to sign the contract?
I don't know about that. I would assume that they do, and different states will do it differently, where some states will do it through the Secretary of State, others might do it through the Association of Counties and actually manage the contract like they do for other software. Minnesota kind of does it that way. Then in South Dakota, it's a hybrid where the Secretary of State will do some of the contracts, and then the counties may do their own contracts as well. And then in Wyoming, the Secretary of State does it completely for them for the new systems, but any add-ons, they'll get permission from the Secretary of State, and then the county will make the purchase. And so you have to watch the HAVA dollars, the Help America Vote Act dollars, that get allocated to the states, to the Secretary of States, but you guys, you don't have one, so it goes to the State Board of Elections, and then they may disperse it out to the counties for them to be on their own to make those purchases. And so it's one of these hodgepodge, because like the Help America Vote Act dollars typically require legislative matching of 20% in order for those federal dollars to be met. But I am currently working on an investigation in South Dakota that I'm a trailblazer in this, because I'm filing a HAVA complaint in South Dakota, and in South Dakota, so the federal law says that you have to go to your Secretary of State and follow your state rules to be able to file a HAVA complaint first. And in our state law, it says that I have to go to the State Board of Elections and file a complaint there, but it's all broken because none of our state laws refer to the process for HAVA complaints. It just talks about declaratory rulings. And so I'm trying to get a declaratory ruling regarding 4 laptops that were never approved for an engineering change order by ES&S. The certificate says that it's a specific Dell that we're supposed to use for the election management system. One of the counties had an HP, not even a Dell. And so it wasn't tested or certified at all. Then other counties had different models of ballots that were never certified or approved by the EAC. And I got an email from the EAC asking, hey, if there's a change in laptop models, we're supposed to get an engineering change order, right? And if it's ruled de minimis, that the test lab at least reviewed it and said, hey, you're good to go, you're blessed, go forward. They didn't even do that for ES&S, but Dominion does it consistently for new equipment. You can see that publicly available on the EAC's website. And you can see that on my website where I actually go through every single engineering change order from 2022 all the way through September of this year. And my first reason was to go through and analyze, are they doing the antivirus updates? Are they doing the Windows patches? Mostly not. So like, for example, in my state, where we're running ES&S 6.1.1.0, our antivirus on those 4 laptops hasn't been updated since March 29th, 2019. So last year, we drank 5-year-old expired milk, and we don't have a new voting system yet, and we're about to go drink 7-year-old expired milk. That's how bad it is. And I know they're not secure because last March, in front of my Brookings County commissioners, I hacked an ES&S laptop live in front of them in under 5 minutes. And then you also have Sequoia voting systems, and what's funny here is your state's never decertified them, and this is way back in the 90s. So you could have a county go buy them and actually be certified to use that Sequoia voting system. So we have to fix our laws, and we have to get people to stand up to say, look, this is garbage. Don't be, and how many of you are aware that Windows 10 itself, Microsoft is trying to get everybody off of it because they're no longer going to be providing patches after October 14th of this year. Most of the voting systems are on Windows 10 for their election management systems. And they have not upgraded or done an engineering change order for Windows 11. So we're already going to be repeating the mistakes of the 2020 election when Windows 7 end of support was January 14th, 2020, and they went to the fall election with unupdated systems because we can look publicly and we see no public record of an engineering change order to update the antivirus or the Windows patches from Microsoft, even though ES&S Dominion all said, we have an extended support contract with Microsoft. What the hell did you do with it? Because we see no fruits of your labor on the EAC's website. Not a single auditor can confirm that ES&S or Dominion came in with patches to be installed on those desktops and laptops to protect the elections. And so, yeah, I was a little pissed when they came out and said this was the most secure election that we've ever had. First thing in my mind was like, what log did you look at? What's the basis of that information? And if this was the most secure, how bad has it been? Because I know for a fact you did nothing on the Windows updates. So right now there's only one system that is certified for VVSG 2.0. And HARC Intervec is the one that did it, and that just happened this July. Take a step back. Your state's not contracted with HART right now. They've not certified a single system from HART. The other ones that we looked at, Clear Ballot, Dominion, ES&S, they're not on that list. Take another step back of where we started this conversation. Trump's executive order, those 3 voting systems are not compliant with Trump's executive order as of today. And there's only 9 days to go. So let's take another step back. Okay, so how bad is it? That's just certified. What's in the pipeline? Don't worry. These are the systems that are under test right now that have either filed an application or are actually going through the testing process. What do you see missing? Oh yeah, Dominion and ES&S. They're not on the list. They haven't even submitted a system. That's as of this morning, before I left, with 9 days to go. We as Americans should be pissed. We, as Americans, should file a class action lawsuit to all the vendors. Or we should go to the legislature and say, you know what? You failed us. Here's how we fix this. You're going to pass legislation to buckle this down and secure our elections, or we're never voting for you again. You've corrupted and created our elections in such an unsecure way, and we don't have the proper oversight. You've been sitting there gaslighting us for years. This is your work product. We all knew when Windows 10 was going to be out of date. Why is it that the counties are updating their systems for everything else in the county, but we're allowing that to come in to our county systems to be unsecured? We need to ask some hard questions here. So here, this is kind of the sticking point of the executive order, where the order also requires the EAC to review and, if necessary, rescind the certification, then recertify voting systems to meet the requirements in the order of VVSG 2.0. Because it takes time for new voting systems to be built to new standards and time for these systems to be tested, certified, and made available to states and local jurisdictions for purchase, there are currently no systems available that have been certified to VVSG. This is a statement directly from the National Conference of State Legislatures back in June. That statement hasn't changed. There's the web link right there. Okay? So even they recognized it. So this isn't hyperbole. This is who your legislators rely on to figure out what other states are doing to find out best practices. They come in and actually testify on positions of what other states are doing so that they can make more uniform laws across the United States, like retail purchases, transferring goods across state lines, cryptocurrency, all of that. Voting systems. Remember I talked about that email that I sent to the EAC about change orders and stuff? And also asked about the list of certified systems, because I'm like looking at their website and I noticed that there was a weird date up here of February. And as I kept going forward, that February date never changed. And he was nice and he was like, oh yeah, about that. It works this way. It's kind of a bug in our web, but it's accurate. It's up to date. We update it as they actually apply. So your interpretation is correct. And so I asked specifically in there, has Dominion submitted a new system? Has ES&S? And his response was, not yet. Part of the other executive order was to get rid of barcodes. Dominion has a ballot marking system. So for disability voters that use the touchscreen, it uses a full standard ballot, and then it will actually mark the ballot on the ovals where they are. ES&S, they have the express vote system that when voters use the touchscreen or sip and puff or any of the other items that are available, it creates its own smaller printed out ballot that has a barcode at the very top. And what's interesting is that if they don't vote for a race, a barcode's not even printed. So like if you have 9 races there and they only vote for 2 races, there's only 2 barcodes, not 9. Whereas when we look at a ballot, we can actually see that there was no vote there. We have no confirmation on these barcodes that there was no vote there for that race. Okay?
And undervotes need to be counted. That's how you reconcile things.
That's correct. So he's right. Undervotes need to be counted. Now, the beauty of the express vote system is that it prevents overvotes. That's part of the VVSG requirement. So we only get overvotes on hand-filled out ballots, but not on the express vote disability devices. Okay? Federal funding changed. So the election security grant for 2025 actually cratered. Originally it was supposed to be 55 million. They got pissed off in the Senate and dropped it down to 15 million. And so the allocation that South Dakota would have gotten would have been $1 million. Instead, we got $250,000. Your state got a lot less too. And so but what's funny is as I've been auditing different states, holy cow, DOJ should be looking at this, because these states are just, they've accumulated so much cash that's unused HAVA dollars since 2002 that is unspent that they're actually earning interest on. And then we created this whole other group from HAVA dollars to election security grants that each year states will get anywhere from $1 million to $5 million of additional dollars. It is such a Ponzi scheme. My own state, it's between $6 and $8 million that we're sitting on of unspent Help America vote dollars. Then I find out that one of the counties has over $800,000 sitting in a bank account that she can do whatever she wants as an election official with those dollars. It's so gross. It's disgusting. When I dived into this, I didn't think I would find this much dystopia. But then it's like I'm reminded of Billy Mays, the old infomercial guy. But wait, there's more. And so here we are in this weird timeline, right? We have some states that start their elections for the 2026 election. Their primaries are in March, right? We have other states that aren't having a legislative session next year. My state is one of the record holders for the least amount of legislative days. We meet January through March in a whopping 35 days, but we actually don't meet the last 5 days. We reserve that for veto overrides, so it's really 30 days. And somehow we're going to make a decision during that 30-day legislative period without a certified 2.0 system, a system from ESNS that doesn't have Windows 11. So I can't even tell my legislature, you should buy this system. You should stay on the course with ESNS. As a computer technology person that provides advice for my clients, I can't in good faith recommend ESNS in its current state because of those two reasons. And the third reason, the antivirus is not robust enough. And even the National Conference of State Legislatures, they even talk about this as well. We're in agreement. New voting systems are one of the costliest purchases for state and local election officials. Really? So you're right out of the gate telling us this is more than your police and fire. Good to know. Many start planning to pay for new systems years in advance. Bing, that would be true, especially if your legislative session has a biennial budget like Minnesota that decided their budget this year. They don't get to do a new budget next year. Many start planning for new systems years in advance. Okay, once states have money on hand, the purchasing process itself can take several months. Yeah, bet it does. It takes a while to get all that equipment together, ship it to the counties, work with the election officials to make sure everything is A-okay and all the parts are there, and run a test election and be confident and ready to go. October, November, it's not even considered December, January, February, March. 5 months, 5 active real months to allocate state money, allocate a test at the state level to approve the voting system. Oh, wait, I forgot to actually maybe consider that the EAC should test it. They should create a certificate, and then the vendor should come to my state and actually seek approval. The likelihood of that happening is not looking so good. So are we planning to fail? Or are we here tonight for the disaster recovery plan? See, now you understand why I say it's one thing to complain about it and point out a problem. It's a whole other issue to come in and actually say I have a solution. But the problem with my solution, which is good for everybody here in the room and all the states, is I make no money off of this. All the resources are free at uscase.org, that you can download the tally sheets, you can download the ballots, you can practice at any time. And I think the parties need to step up. I think we need to change some of the laws. Because you know who's most afraid? And this is my biggest concern. We have good election officials that are named county auditors or county clerks, depending on how your state labels them, that run the elections. In my state of South Dakota, we have 66 counties. I'm already aware of 15 auditors that are going to retire before the election. That's devastating. They're not aware of this at this level. Imagine how many more could quit. We need to trust our election officials, and we need to be the solution providers. This is why I'm asking all parties to look at how they can change their election laws, but even without the change in election laws, to start that relationship with your county official to understand where they're at today. Hey, has the state and the county started looking at new election equipment? What are your thoughts on Trump's executive order? Is the state considering complying with the executive order, or are they going to brush it off when it comes to the new voting systems? And I see that ES&S doesn't have a new system under 2.0. Are we just planning on running the old systems that are still at Windows 10? Have you asked for an engineering change order from ES&S to update your antivirus or the Windows patches to make it more secure? What's our disaster recovery plan if the machines don't work? Would you like us, could we work with you to be ready for hand counting if all of this goes south? Should we start training Republicans and Democrats together through your office, and can our party provide you a list of election judges and hand counters and post-election auditors that we train on our side on a process, and if you agree with that process, we'll train them now, so that way it's not a cost to the county. And we'll already pre-filter out people who can actually handle hand counting versus those that don't. That way we're sending you people who've already been trained and are confident in doing it. That way not all the weight's on you. That's a completely different approach. And I think we've lost our way, because it's interesting, as I've traveled the country, it's interesting when I go to Wyoming, they actually have in their codified law that 45 days before an election, the chair of the county has to deliver a list of election judges, hand count personnel, post-election audit personnel, and if they don't, then the county auditor is allowed to advertise in the newspaper to find other people. I don't know if we need a law to do that, but maybe we need to codify that so we don't forget about it. But this is something that we should start doing. What's interesting is that in Minnesota, when you look at the Democrat Party website, they actually have what's called an election liaison. in their bylaws and as an official position in each of the counties. That person is responsible for establishing communication with the county auditor in Minnesota so that they know all of the rules of the game. Minnesota GOP does not do this at all. But right away, the Democrats already know when the logic and accuracy testing is happening. They've already been filing volunteers to be there for election judges, absentee ballot boards, all of that. The Republicans last year had to fight their way just to get into Hennepin County's absentee ballot board, which is 45 days, but they didn't file until like a week before the election. Then they were finally allowed to have at least a Republican in Hennepin County. So some of the issues with elections control is partisans. And we have an opportunity to start that communication in a non-threatening way and to actually go in and support our county auditors and election officials so that we don't have a bunch of them quitting. Because wouldn't it even be worse to have somebody who's completely inexperienced coming in and running the elections with their head cut off, panicking, and not having support, and everybody's asking a ton of questions and nobody's there offering a hand? So that's my challenge to you guys, is offer the hand. I mean, the reality is the county works for us, and this is just us. It's our county, right? We should be able to do this. So if we want better of our county, we're the ones that have to step up and step into the game and do that. I was having a conversation with another gentleman here earlier today, and he was giving out flyers in his church, and he's wondering, why aren't those people here today? Why are we not teaching civics that it is so important? Now, I can make this statement, and some of you guys are going to laugh, but obviously you're here because you're not quietly going to go into the dark of socialism. I mean, we can totally make our elections easy and less transparent and just go straight to dictatorship, but that's so much easier. But I guess you guys are refusing to go into dictatorship, and you'd like to have transparency in your elections to make sure that everybody's vote is protected. Am I right? So of course, that's what we want to do. And the reality is that transparency is the inoculation to all conspiracy theories. So when we have machines that we don't know the security level of, we don't know the source code, we don't know how it's interpreting the ballots, and they won't give us the cast vote records, yeah, I guess we're going to have a little bit of suspicion. And of course, the order does not provide federal funding for this because an executive order can't fund. That's the power of the purse with Congress, or the states are going to have to do it themselves. They could spend down. And this is the best thing about these certificates, and feel free to zoom in on this for the audience at home. This is one of the most plain language guarantees I've ever seen from a certificate. Imagine you're buying medicine and it actually said this. You've got a cold or flu or whatever it is, and it basically says on there, this certificate is not an endorsement of the product by any agency of the U.S. government, and no warranty of the product is either expressed or implied. So we spent all this money to certify this equipment, and you're telling us, good luck. I didn't write it. It's on every certificate since 2005. Every certificate since 2005. How many Americans would be upset if they saw that? When we talk about the hardware, this is where we have to kind of keep our eyes open to see what they're doing. There are thumb drives that are so specific that can be used in these. They have to spend big money on the thumb drives because there's chain of custody issues. So when they take the thumb drive from the tabulator and then bring it into the laptop to basically accumulate the results, there are serial numbers on the thumb drive that every time it's inserted into the tabulator, it logs it into the system log and also the event log. Then when it's brought over to the laptop, it puts it into its system log, its event log, and the programming log. So that way we can see the path of where that thumb drive went, and if that thumb drive was infected or there was an issue with it, we could isolate the issue. It's so secure that you can't just go to Walmart and buy a SanDisk thumb drive and put it into the tabulator. The tabulator is supposed to automatically reject it. It won't put any data on there, it can't load anything from there, etc. And even you'll see APC battery packs, cyber packs, those are all there because they've been tested to last a certain amount of time for that equipment. So if there's a power outage, that it can keep running and the voters can still vote. Or in a disaster, they turn the tabulator around and there's a separate insert bin that the voters can still put their ballots in during a power outage or a system failure.
Hey, Rick,
Yep.
would that thumb drive log, would that information be included in the cast vote records?
So it's even better than that. So on the thumb drive that comes from each of the tabulators when they do their final end of night save, yes, and it is so available that they don't even encrypt it. It's meant to be read. Event log and system log. It's just a notepad file that you can go in and look at.
Is that possibly part of the reason why they are refusing to turn over these cast vote records?
So I'm going to do one better. Because the election officials have never reviewed them and they don't know what they are, they're coming from a stance of uneducation that they're saying that they're not there because they don't know that they're there. And they've never looked.
This is all so complicated that most of the clerks or auditors, they don't fully comprehend it.
Correct. They've not been trained properly.
Yeah.
And especially your newbies that come in, I feel terrible for them. And here's what's interesting here as well. Whenever, this is from the manuals from ES&S, and every vendor has this within page 2 of their manuals. So the manual for the DS200, the 450, the election management system, and it states, in accordance with the U.S. Election Assistance Commission Testing and Certification Program Manual 2.0, ES&S hereby notifies the purchaser that any changes or modifications to an EAC-approved voting system which has not been tested and certified by the EAC will void the EAC certification for such EAC-approved voting system. So my 4 counties that bought the laptops that were not certified, it's void. And yet I have one of the top attorneys in the United States telling me I'm wrong. I'm not the one who wrote the damn manual. ES&S is telling us that. Even they understand it. This is the most important definition. I have lawyers trying to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about for a voting system. In the 2002 Help America Vote Act, it defines it. That's the definition. So like in the state of Wyoming, ES&S tells me that the ballot on demand printers are not part of a certified system. Even the EAC tripped up and sent a letter to the Secretary of State of Wyoming, and they conveniently left off, E. To make available any materials to the voter, such as notices, instructions, forms, or paper ballots. Ballot on demand is a ballot. You're printing a ballot. It's right there in E. It's corrupt. It is bad. And that's the letter from the EAC lying to the Secretary of State of Wyoming. So I finally did enough research, but it's going to be a long road, and I don't know if I'm going to get there in time. But I found this great little U.S. Supreme Court ruling back in 2016. It It's a terrible case. This young lady is having a mental health breakdown, 16 years old. Her parents take her into a clinic. The clinic isn't certified properly by the state. 3 of 4 of the people who are writing prescriptions to this young lady are not licensed to write prescriptions. Yeah, you're right, she died. The original lawsuit by the parents to the clinic and also the insurance, the courts basically ruled that the parents didn't have standing and couldn't pursue the lawsuit any further. They appealed it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Clarence Thomas, in an 8-0 ruling, wrote the majority opinion. Oh, he was pissed and he was fired up. He said, no go. Back in the 1800s, the United States passed a False Claims Act law. Any claim of accreditation or certification that is false and you request federal dollars, you're liable. And Clarence Thomas basically said, oh, by the way, parents, go ahead and sue him into the ground. You have standing. So how does that relate? A lot of this voting equipment was purchased with Help America federal dollars. So when you have these counties, Secretary of States, and vendors injecting unsecured, untested, uncertified, unaccredited equipment into our elections, they're liable. And I have the evidence in Minnesota, South Dakota, Wyoming. Hard evidence. You've seen some of it here, but it's going to take me a long road to get there. But luckily I was able to raise money to start that process, and I've already filed 6 complaints in South Dakota to the State Board of Elections. They're lying and basically saying they don't have the legal authority to make that decision when it's right there in state statute and in federal law that they do. So back to E. This is the False Claims Act. So you can see this on the video. I'll let it sit there. So yeah, the defendant's failure to disclose non-compliance with material statutory, regulatory, or contractual requirements makes the representations misleading half-truths. Got it.
So them laptops is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
They sold them non-compliant, knowingly sold them non-compliant equipment.
Correct. And I'm working with an auditor who has standing in South Dakota because she did the purchase in 2024 to replace the HP laptop that the county was using originally. I've been working already on this for 2 years to get in a position to have people of authority with the evidence and the standing to represent their counties to go after the vendors for non-compliance and to hold the EAC accountable for misleading the counties in the state. I have RICO now. So, and this is part of his ruling, and it also talks about, accordingly, we hold that the implied certification theory can be a basis for liability at least where 2 conditions are satisfied. First, the claim does not merely request payment, but also make specific representations about the goods or services provided. And second, the defendant's failure to disclose non-compliance. Bingo. So this is enacted in 1863. I had to go way back. And what's interesting is that they talk about Windows security updates, and critical security updates available at time of certification were applied to the Windows 10 and Windows Server systems. But not since. They're not doing the engineering change orders to do it. And here's the regulation that your state doesn't require. Normally this says voluntary voting system guidelines, and when I do my presentations in South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, their state statutes adopt the voluntary voting system guidelines as a requirement before a voting system can be used in their state. Remember I told you the asterisk that your state refers to an organization that no longer exists? So you guys are kind of like free range in that regard. And in here, under 7.4.2, it says that, protection against malicious software. Vendor shall develop and document the procedures to be followed to ensure that such protection is maintained in a current status. That's a separate case that I have to ask. What is considered current? 5, 7 years, 6 months? In the IT world, in most specifications, it's 30 days. This is the 2024 risk. Just new malware in 2024 was 74 million. Already this year, we're already at 65 million. That was June. Here's where some of your systems are at. So that little red box, don't worry about it. It's not covered. Your systems don't know about those new malware pieces because there hasn't been engineering change orders to update your systems. That's a big chunk, isn't it?
How will we know what system we have in our?
Great question. So the question is, how do we know what system we have in our county? This is where that relationship with your county clerk or county auditor is so important, is ask them. It's available on your Wisconsin State Board of Elections website. It usually has a listing out there, but you should confirm with your local city and also your county to see what they're using, just to be definitively clear. So most of your state, I believe, is either ES&S or Dominion. This area seems to be more ES&S.
Would the county have all the local have the same system now?
Generally, the county kind of does the master agreement and approves a voting system, and then either partners with the cities to basically purchase it with them or for them. So yes, the short answer. Within a county jurisdiction, it should be the same. Because usually the election results will go from the township, the city, and then up to the county. Then the county takes that data and then gives it up to the state. And so to make it easier for them at the county level, they prefer to have the same unified system so that they're just training one way, just to have one manual of what to look for and what to report, which I 100% agree with. And so these were the engineering change orders for 6060, and we can see that this stuff is important. Even just a simple CMOS battery has to be reported. Even an alternate camera cable, it's literally a patch cable, like a Cat5 cable that they had to get certification for. They decided to go with a Cat7 cable and they had to get the blessing. In other ones, we even see just the bag itself that captures the ballots within the tabulator also have to have approval. And those are de minimis. So this stuff is actually pretty serious. And we see that this timeline is pretty quick. So like it was submitted on 5/31/2022 and it was approved on 6/8/2022. So the process seems to be okay. It's not an issue. But the fact that they're not applying is the problem. They're not doing the work. And we also learned in Wyoming that when it was approved in Wyoming, ES&S forgot to do the security patch for Print Nightmare for an entire year. And so the question is, because you have that same system, did ES&S come out and update all your systems for Print Nightmare? All right. And here's some of the other crazy stuff that I talked about, like adding a tote bag. A bag had to get approval, but a laptop doesn't? What can do more damage, the bag or the laptop? Yes, sir.
So with the election equipment falling under critical infrastructure now,
Yep.
what about the Badger books here in Wisconsin or e-poll books in different places? Do them fall under election equipment?
Generically, I'm going to say yes. However, there's kind of a bifurcation. Even at the EAC, it is tested differently. There's separate rules for voter registration systems that they basically back away from, but election day activities, they do participate in, and there's a whole separate standard for that. And they're in the middle of developing more rigorous standards, they being the EAC, to kind of get control of that, because Minnesota and other states went with no ink early on and did a bunch of these election poll pads that were never really analyzed. Then ES&S also enters into the game where they actually have poll pads that are separate from their voting systems, and so now we're starting to see more discussions around that. So the short answer is yes, there should be, but stay tuned because, for example, your state law doesn't require it. So you guys are really feral because the original association never considered that equipment. So right now, it's a huge gray area for your state, the way I would look at it. So it'd be, in your case, for your state, I'd have to review the actual contract to see what's in the body of the contract that protects the voters. So we were looking at a contract that our Secretary of State signed with BPRO. And in it, it talks about connecting with the ERIC system on the back end. Well, we don't allow that in our state law. And so Jessica Palmea caught that early on from SD Kamencine and raised the alarm. And that went before the State Board of Elections and, the GOAC Committee, Government Oversight and Accountability, and they reviewed it and they've asked further questions. We got a new contract, but now they've replaced the word ERIC with other external systems. And I raised the flag with that with Senator John Carley and said, hey, this is an open door. This is not acceptable. So it's like, it should be specific. And in another area, they said, and we also connect with Department of Homeland Security, the Social Security Death Index, other state systems. And then they put in, et cetera, ETC. I'm like, oh, what is that? That's the wild card. That's Eric coming back in.
The reason why I ask is because they're really pushing these Badger books in the state big time.
Yep.
And when it's pointed out to them that they haven't been certified by anyone.
Right.
No one.
Yep.
There's been no independent testing, nothing. Now, WAC is saying they're not voting equipment.
Correct. And so when we go back to that original HAVA definition, this is disgusting because you and I look at anything that's electronic that is touching our elections, we generically think that as voting equipment, right? Not to be confused with voting system that we saw under the HAVA definition, but we have to talk to our legislators to say, buckle this down because this is something that's insecure. So we go back to the 2020 election in Minnesota where we look at Keith Ellison, who's the Attorney General, and at 3:45 he posts on Twitter, hurry up, get out and vote. We don't have enough votes yet. Hold on, lots of red flags here. Number one, attorneys are generally really careful about what they say publicly. Number two, they typically are evidence-based brokers. Number three, I don't really trust Keith Ellison. He's way on the other side when it comes to election integrity issues. Number four, he tweeted that. So I have to take a step back. With those little four elements, he's a lawyer, he knows the law. Two, he was head of the DNC at a federal level. Three, what kind of data input is he getting to make that claim as fact to put it out on Twitter at the time, and then deletes it 45 minutes later. Thank God the internet lives forever. We have screenshots of that. But the fact that that was there, and so it compelled me to do a security scan on Minnesota and other states, a GSA certified scan of the voter registration system that was the public-facing side in Minnesota. And sure enough, the scan could log in, download records, and alter records. So that means, yes, it is plausible that somebody could have been monitoring who's voted, and with data structures out there that the DNC and the Republicans have, they could be running scripts to basically go, all right, these 10 voters over here, we know they lean Democrat, and these 8 voters over here lean Republican, and these 5 people just walked in and they all voted Republican. Now we're behind, panic, send out the tweet.
They also know who is not voting.
That's correct. And so to basically know that there's a bunch of available voters out, why not go ahead and do that? So that's where I say he's a fact-based individual, understands the law, and he makes this, and as a partisan who's head of the DNC during that time, yeah, I believe he had access that he wasn't supposed to have, or somebody had access that was reporting to him. So he's the one that put out the tweet, not me. So I trust whatever evidence he had to make that claim. All right. So then we actually confirm with the EAC about the engineering change orders, about the laptop, and also to update the antivirus. And he's basically saying, yeah, they should be doing this. But he has to kind of parse his words. But he agrees with me. The EAC 2019 statement is basically telling them, do it. Keep our system secure, but they're not doing it. So that is a future case in many other states. So ES&S has newer systems. So even though you're over here, up there at the 6060 system, there's newer systems that would be more secure. Yeah, the antivirus would be 2 years old right now as it stands going into the next election, but it'd be better than where you're at now, because you'd be closer to 4 and 5 years old. But the problem with 6.5 is that it has a lot more internet connections in it to corrupt the elections. You can actually see in their documents there, Cisco routers, firewalls, all this stuff. And there's been no engineering change orders recently for the 6.4.0.0 system, and that was approved on 8/18/2023. So going into the 2026 election, we'll be 3 years out. So it's this continual consistency of negligence, is the way I want to phrase it. And even 6.5, that was approved 7/24/2024. So we'll be 2 years out of date for the next election, because there's been no engineering change orders for it to keep it secure. And we see that it's Windows 10, not Windows 11. So you approved a system in 2024, knowing full well that in just a little over a year, an operating system's not going to be supported anymore. And Windows 11's been around. You chose this path. You know when the legislatures meet, when you can go get money. Kind of hard for me to go to my state board of elections, to my legislature, and say, hey, we could upgrade to a newer system that's more secure, wink, wink, but here's another issue. The Windows 10 system doesn't have a replacement yet. I can't make you totally secure. I can get you partway there. So the argument is there's no time to fix this. So when I started this series in March, that's the original slide. Here we are in September. They fixed none of it. Thank you, EAC. Thank you, ES&S. And thank you, Dominion, for not stepping up to the plate. You did this. Don't you dare come after me.
So Microsoft is dropping staff
Yes.
and they haven't got a replacement for it?
Microsoft does. It's Windows 11.
Yeah. So they have it all set to go.
Yeah, it's been ready for years. But Dominion and ES&S, they've sloughed it off. They haven't done it. They haven't done the work to move it over. But yet your county, you should ask your county, how many Windows 10 systems do you have and how many more do you have to upgrade? What's the timeline for your upgrades from Windows 10 to Windows 11 in the auditor's office? Oh, we're already done. That'll probably be the response. Most state systems and most counties are more than likely already upgraded. Like the cities I can already had them on Windows 11. And yeah, I'm a tech guy. I have a few customers that delayed because of financial reasons. So I'm updating a few dental offices this week and next week. But that was planned and it was understood. But at least we're doing it before October 14th, right?
Why do you suppose these vendors, doesn't matter which one, all of them, why have they not submitted new stuff to the EAC to get them certified? You think they know they're not going to pass?
No, I don't think so. The question is, why aren't I'm going to kind of truncate it. Why do you think the vendors aren't doing this? So based upon no evidence at all, and I hope you sue me because discovery is terrible, but beneficial for me so I can actually get the answer. I'm just going to plainly state out, based upon the work product that I see at the EAC, you're lazy. You don't care. So I encourage Dominion, ES&S to sue me so we can actually sit down and have a discussion in front of a judge. Or do better. But based upon the evidence on the EAC's website that's publicly available, and the email I sent to the EAC asking if everything was up to date, and they said yes, prove me wrong. Do better. We have time before the next election. Get me a 2.0 system. Get me the costs. Get me something. I don't even have an application. There's so many steps to go through, and you haven't even started at step 1. Hart has. So should I go out there and tell every county, run from ES&S and go to Hart because they're the only ones that are at 2.0? It's an option.
Doesn't this play into our advantage where we can just say, well, you didn't get certified equipment up to snuff, so we can just do paper now, and that's all we can do because you're not up to certification level.
So the question is, because you're not up to certification level, you really shouldn't use these machines. Well, there's a problem with that because the EAC's defied the executive order in that they have not decertified the 1.0 systems. Because they're not decertified, the election officials and the legislature, and they'll gaslight us to go, yeah, but they haven't been decertified, so what's the issue? They're not secure.
So another question. You say that the election equipment costs more than the police and fire. Is that what I heard you say earlier?
That's what I'm assuming based upon the statement from the National Conference of State Legislatures, that they say that this is one of the most expensive purchases that they'll be making.
Because when I'm talking to my township or my county clerk, they just minimize it. No, it's just a few grand for the machine and that's all. There's almost no cost at all if you listen to them.
Yeah, that's actually false. When you buy so per year, the maintenance costs, that's a correct statement. When you actually have to buy a new DS200, those are generally about $8,600 each. When you buy an express vote system, that's about $8,600.
County needs like 50 of them or 100 of them or whatever.
Yeah, so depending on how many precincts, if you're a state that does precinct voting where the voter puts the ballot into the tabulator, That's where it's more expensive. I come from a state where they actually have all the voters vote, put them into a box, bring all the ballots, breaking chain of custody, bringing them to the county seat, and then the election officials feed the ballots in.
Because if they all had their own machine, the county's spending easily $1 million.
On the larger ones, that could be very close. So like, for example, a DS850 is generally right around $108,000 or more. The DS450 is right around $45,000, and those you typically see at the county seats to process all the absentee ballots.
Okay, so that's not in every precinct.
Correct, but it's at the county seat. So if you have a smaller county that, say, only has 10,000 people, they may have a DS200 at the county seat, maybe 1, 2, or 3 of them, and then DS200s in each of the precincts for the voters to put in. And so if they have 20 precincts, that could be 20 times $8,600.
Arguments to convince my township to let the citizens get rid of the electronic machine and let us count the dang things. There's only 1,000 people.
Well, it's actually a cut by 1,000 knives, because the other is it's cost. It's we don't have time to implement this, and right now most counties are setting their budget for next year, right? So if it's not in the budget, well, I guess you didn't put it in the budget, so you really can't buy it, right? So don't let them put it in the budget. You wait till January and say, okay, we're going to hand count this thing. Because December 15th is generally when most counties across the United States do their final budget and send it into the state.
So wait till after that, then accuse them of not having up-to-date machines and say, now we have to count the ballots by hand.
Yep, because you don't have any money. Because the first initial purchase, when they buy that new machine, it'll probably cost them about $8 a ballot to basically use the machine to count the ballots versus doing hand counting would be about $1.
Is that a good thing to say? Hand counting is 10% of machine counting?
In the initial year, yes, but over time, as some counties use the same machine and don't keep the upgrades, they end up at parity. Because then when you take elections over an 8-year period, then all of a sudden it comes down to about $1 on both sides, and you account for all the elections.
So
And
by that time, it's totally vulnerable and hackable and...
yes, yes, and it really puts our election officials in a bad spot because they don't have proper oversight. But here's the other thing: did you know that the machines absolutely destroy voter intent? Here's a couple of examples. So for example, here on the right-hand side, we have 2 candidates that are selected with the ovals, and then the voter said, this one. The machine doesn't read this one. The machine reads the 2 ovals and says, overvote, and then ignores it. The next one, we see that the person voted for 2 candidates, but then crossed out the one and said, no, that's an overvote. But the voter intent is there. Then the next one, that's considered an undervote because the voter circled the candidate but didn't fill in the oval. So the machine doesn't know about the voter intent and says the voter didn't vote for the candidate. So it creates these crazy little rules that we lose votes. But what was great is when I went back and reviewed the 2020 election, this was hilarious, and this is in Wisconsin. Trump sued the wrong counties, and when a bunch of your counties still had the cast vote records, I downloaded all of the counties that were available in your state, and I went through and reviewed them. But I didn't start the work until 2022 and 2023. And I found out Trump actually won Wisconsin with the votes and overvotes, and I'll kind of show you a little bit of how it happened. And part of it is here, where you have voters who are so excited to vote for their candidate of choice, not only do they circle the oval, but they write them in. And then because both ovals are filled, that's an overvote, and the vote's not counted. Dang it. So not only did it happen for Joe Biden, but it also happened for Trump. In the 8 counties I downloaded, there were 6,000 of those for Trump, 4,000 for Biden. Then the other one is great. Oh yeah, what happened in 2020? COVID. What also happened? Mail out ballots. You see that little line there going across write-in? That's a fold. The tabulator misread that fold as a vote selection and created it as an overvote. So Davey Leary there lost a vote. So the other thing I kind of want to bring to your attention as well is like this one here. I mean, it happened in this race here, where not only did David Leary lose it, but up above in another race on the same ballot, Mark lost his vote because the fold was for the Republican at that time. So if you didn't cast a vote and you turned in an absentee ballot, the Republican was getting all those votes. Now, I want to show, so you have two sheets of paper hopefully in front of you, a green and a yellow ballot. Has everybody got one? All right, so let's look at the green one first. This is so fun because I'm going to answer one of your questions. So we look at this official ballot, and this is actually from the state of Wisconsin. This is Dodge County, is where I downloaded this one from. Then what you see here is down here at the bottom, notice that line going through? So, and that's for the governor, lieutenant governor. The line is going through write-in. So no matter what candidate you wrote for, and if you mailed in the ballot, that write-in was going to get selected and your vote for governor wasn't going to count. And how do I know that? On the back is the other side of a cast vote record, which is a result file. And so if we look at the result file here at the back and you look at governor, lieutenant governor, it says overvoted. And it shows you what was selected. Everybody see that? Where it says overvoted? So when you go back and look at the front and you're like, wow, so that's not voter intent. The voter did not vote to overvote that election. That should make you pissed. That means your clerk, whoever designed that ballot, which they have a requirement, and ES&S has a warning in their manual, make sure you design your ballots so that when you're mailing out absentee ballots, that the folds don't go over the timing marks or any of the ovals, because that's what happens. See how I'm building so much trust in the machines?
Do we know if the Dodge County clerk designed this ballot, or did they farm that out to the vendor?
Great question. It was farmed out to the vendor. And what's interesting is that we've learned from cases across the United States that ES&S, because of what they tell the clerks, they literally throw them under the bus, and they win every lawsuit on this. Oh, this isn't our fault. So that means you don't test before you send it out? Because in their lawsuits, they claim that the election official didn't do a robust enough logic and accuracy test that would have caught this. Got it. Kind of important discussion to have with your election official, right? Making sure that you, as a Republican Party, are there for logic and accuracy testing and asking, hey, did you fold the ballots? Let's see what that looks like. Because how else do you protect your candidates? I mean, if your candidate's getting a fold on it, maybe you'll just keep your mouth shut, because they'll be the default winner.
I've went to many logic and accuracy tests. Most of these clerks have absolutely no idea how to do a proper test.
That's right.
No idea.
Yep, and he's right. So he's observed many clerks' logic and accuracy tests, and they just don't know how to do it. Now here's another scary one. Let's look at the yellow ballot. So down here at the bottom, I stayed in there. Guess where the machine misread this ballot? Don't look at the back, but the front here. And so you kind of look at the ballot and you're just kind of like, well, it kind of looks normal. You know what the voter intent is going to be. But it will shock you that if you look at the right-hand side, the county sheriff race, the second to last race there, that little mark in write-in, that was enough to trigger a vote as an overvote. And so if you look at the back of the sheet, you'll see there for the sheriff, county sheriff, Dale in write-in are marked as overvote, and therefore that vote is lost. So somebody who has a little bit of a disability that did a little pen rest was enough to trigger that. How many of you knew that was potentially even a case? That's poor voter education that your election official is required to teach you about. That's part of the logic and accuracy testing that should be done to understand that sensitivity. So when I sit there and I think about disability rights, we have a lot of guys who aren't going to admit to a disability and are going to fill out a standard ballot. And they might have shakes or everything else, but the reality is that we are disenfranchising voters, and we didn't realize it. Doesn't that just make your heart sink? How common is this? It's common enough. So, and I see it in multiple counties across the United States that this is happening in. And I don't necessarily expect a clerk to sit there and test every single iteration of that. It would be inhumane, right? I mean, I even have limits as to where I would ask an election official. I mean, I'm willing to say, hey, you should at least check out the folds, but to check the sensitivity, I don't know if I'm going to go out and do that. But understanding where people are at, seems like we're trying to pigeonhole people to use an express vote. And guys, they don't want to be in a room full of people and selected out as being the guy that's using the disability device.
It seems to me like that sensitivity should be codified in the law somewhere. If you're gonna be using this, then it should be uniform.
Well,
Not one way in one county or one way in another county.
well, there's a standard. There's a federal standard that these machines were tested to and set at. That's the issue. So there is a standard.
Okay.
But the standard may be to, so it's interesting that if somebody were just to do pen rests, that's enough for them to do a vote. But on the, if that's all they're capable of doing. But on the other hand, the other spectrum is the accidental.
How many overvotes were registered?
I'd have to go back and look at the numbers because I looked at the ballots that I was able to download. I don't remember the statewide numbers from 2020. So,
Is it reported statewide?
not completely. Some counties withhold the information, only reported on their state or their county websites or the local jurisdiction, and then it's not typically reported on the statewide or the statewide canvassing report. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge. So like if you look at your state canvassing report, you'll just have the vote totals for all the candidates and write-in, but not a statement of undervotes or overvotes.
There's no way you can reconcile it without those numbers.
Correct. Correct. All right. You guys need a quick break for bathroom and snacks back there? Why don't we take a little 5 minutes and kind of recalibrate, and then we'll come back and actually count some ballots together. We'll do kind of a quick little lesson. All right, so these are the two ballot styles that ES&S uses. You have the standard ballot on the right-hand side, which is what most of us fill out with the ovals. And on the left-hand side is the express vote or disability ballot that you typically see with the barcodes. That's what the executive order was trying to eliminate, because you and I can't read barcodes. I can't confirm what that barcode is doing inside the tabulator very easily. And it also kind of ties in when we look at logic and accuracy testing, that when we see that both of these ballots are being used in your jurisdictions at a city level, at a precinct level, and at a county level, we can now logically look at this and go, okay, what's the minimum number that we should see on a logic and accuracy test for a candidate? In this case, it's 2. So if you have a candidate on a logic and accuracy test that receives 1 or 0, you know immediately that they did not do a valid logic and accuracy test. It's that easy. If you also see that a contest, all of the fields have just one vote or two votes, they didn't protect your elections or even test for vote flips or programming mistakes, because it's happened. I believe that there are simple mistakes that happen that we're not protecting ourselves from. When you have ES&S programming a majority of the elections across the United States or even Dominion, and your election officials aren't properly testing the equipment, that creates an issue. That tells me they don't have proper oversight of the equipment. All right, now, and so this is where I think we have to make a change to educate candidates and parties how the election laws work, but also how the equipment works, if we're going to stick with it. But it also opens our eyes as activists to kind of understand, do the election officials actually have proper oversight? So for candidates, when they find an invalid test deck, what are their rights? Should they go petition the clerk to say, I demand a retest because I don't trust your election? Or, after the election results are accumulated, can they use that as evidence, now that you've collected it, as evidence to petition and challenge an election for a hand count? Due to an improper test deck, you did not confirm the validity of the programming of the machine to ascertain that every candidate had a unique number of votes selected to actually determine that the machine was programmed accurately. There are issues that because all of the candidates in my contest have the same number of votes, I can't ascertain whether or not the machine was accurate or not per state statute or rules. And especially if the candidates don't understand that they have a short time to contest an election, the first window is potentially with the county board of elections when they canvass that election, that they may or may not have time to petition them or file a complaint for them to stop it and ask for a hand count. They may not even have statutory authority, so it's important to understand those rules. Or do they have to wait, and depending on how their race is selected, so if they're a candidate just in one county, they may only have to file one petition. If they're a candidate in multiple counties, they may have to file in each county, or your state law may require them to file it with the State Board of Elections, the Election Commission, to file the complaint because they're in multiple counties. And your state law may say they only have 5 to 10 days after canvassing in which to file an election contest. So if the canvassing is, say, November 15th for the counties, but yet for the state it's December 1st, and you have 10 days, those are two different windows completely. So if you don't understand the law and how it's put in, you may miss an opportunity to actually ask for a hand count due to an improper logic and accuracy test. And once that timeline is done for contesting an election, it's over. We're powerless. The law no longer supports us questioning the election. So those are additional reforms that may have to be looked at to help protect the voters and the candidates to have more transparent elections and to have time to understand. But first, we have to pick up the baton and actually get candidates and party and activists to understand the election laws first. So if you don't understand the existing laws, how can you even protect the elections? And that's a heavy lift. And it's funny now that I've had to go learn a lot of different states' election laws and help candidates in multiple states contest their elections and go through the process. And now we're finding holes, but now I'm working with legislators based upon that experience to try and make corrections to the law to make it better. So in South Dakota this year, we were able to work with legislators to extend the time so that candidates could have time to file a petition. And we also made some of the evidence more available, such as when they do, a county clerk does a logic and accuracy test, a book with all of the logic and accuracy test materials and reports has to be publicly available for inspection within 24 hours of the test at no cost. Before, they were refusing and creating all these games and all that other stuff. Now we've found an issue. We've rectified that part. We'll see if they go into compliance. So we're trailblazers in this, trying to learn. We didn't know what we didn't know before, but 2020 really woke us up. And for some, it was even earlier, and for others, it's even later. And that's okay. So this is just a review, a bigger picture, so the people in the back can actually see what I was talking about before on voter intent. So like the machines don't understand the written part or the circle part, and so this is where we get the overvotes and undervotes that can happen. And so this is where hand counting is always superior. And so it's interesting, in jurisdictions that still have hand counting today, they don't use machines to do post-election audits of hand counting. It's not a thing. But yet we do post-election audits of the machines by hand. But we lie and say it's an audit. The IRS would blush, and there's no way that you could actually get away with this with the IRS. So when they create these little formulas saying, okay, well, we're going to do 3% to 5% of the precincts, and then we're going to do a couple of the races. When you sit down and actually do the math on a ballot, it equates to literally about a day of receipts. Imagine going to the IRS and saying, oh, you're going to audit me? I'm just going to give you a day of receipts. We're good, right? Not happening. So the fact that legislators and activists and vendors have gotten away with post-election audits at such a dismal number, it is an assault on the word audit. And now they have a new term, which is laughable but more honest, if you understand what they're doing. They call it risk-limiting audits. So you actually want to do less work to reduce the risk of actually finding an issue. Got it. That's literally what it is.
Why does it take a state like Arizona 2 weeks to get the results in, and Florida can have it done by 11 o'clock at night?
Great question. So the question is, why are some states able to do it immediately on election night to get their election results, but then other states it takes so long? So part of the issue that the executive order tries to address is we get this dystopian nature of the absentee ballots. And so when you get the absentee ballots that have an extended timeline, that the executive order is trying to say, look, the ballots have to be in on election day. But then when you get states like Minnesota that allow postmark by this day, which means that it could still arrive the next day, 2 days later, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Or you get California that basically says, you're good if it comes in 9 days later. You know, Arizona's kind of the same way based upon a postmark date. And so as those ballots come in, as long as that postmark is on there, they still have to legally tabulate those ballots. And then other circumstances, it was known that there was some equipment failure that they had to hand count those ballots, but because it was after the election and they didn't have a process in their state law to have hand counters available, they were scrambling and trying to use their election judges or city/county employees to fill in the gaps to try and finish counting the ballots. And so unfortunately, the awareness of actually what happened, legislators are not looking at that to say, how can we improve this process? Because you're right, and this is one of the arguments that we have for using the machines, right? The public demands to know who won right away. Really? Really? Do we really want just a number, or do we want the number? Do you want accuracy or just a number? What do we really want? I don't think we've really dived into the essence of what do we want as the real numbers. And so this is where I'm even willing to bifurcate to say, okay, here's what I'm willing to do. Go ahead and use the tabulators all you want. I don't even care if you tested it incorrectly. We'll get you those numbers by 10 o'clock at night. However, the next day, we're doing 100% hand count, post-election audit. We're going to agree with you that those tabulator numbers are unofficial results. But when it comes to the hand count, that's the official result. Well, that's too expensive. We can't find that many people to hand count. We can't do this and that. Enough. How many of you in this room are Americans? Nobody? Oh, you're Americans. Okay, I get it. So we can do this. I don't see anybody with Americant on their head or a button or shirt. I pretty much see Americans. It's in the name. We can. Have you ever been asked? Of course not. We are planning to fail instead of planning to succeed. All right. Sorry to be on my soapbox. Now for the star of the show. The tally method. These are the most complicated instructions that you will ever find. Unlike a Dominion and ES&S manual that is hundreds of pages of how to conduct and run the machines and to count the ballots. This is an incredible, whopping one page. Very simple, right? We use a blue pen and a red pen. We have a table of 4 people, color-coded, Republican and Democrat as to where they sit. A Democrat and a Republican look at the ballots together. They'll decide between the two of them who will start calling out the ballots, and the other one will observe to make sure that it's correct. On the other side, you have a Republican and Democrat listening and tallying, marking on the sheet the candidate's name on the sheet so that they can follow along. The first set of 25 ballots, they'll start with the blue pen. When their numbers match, because they just did little slashes, then they can go on to the next 25 ballots, starting with the red pen. Then, when they get to the 50th ballot, they compare numbers and see if they're still good. If they're not good, go back and recount the last 25 ballots. Now, instead of a slash, it's an X. Then, if it works out, and they found out that, oh, Jane over here put an extra slash in red for candidate A, they can go to the table and go, okay, the 51st ballot, we're going to call out that one, and you're going to mark it in blue. And so are you, Joe. Now we can mark the rest of the 49 ballots in blue. Or 24 ballots in blue. So that we can have the correction and keep moving forward. So every set of 25 ballots by race, you're building confidence in the numbers. Complete oversight, bipartisan, and the beauty is you can have observers in the room also following along. They can download that Excel sheet, write the candidate names in, and tally along right there alongside. So a typical configuration that we've studied is a group of 4 can do 300 ballots, 11 races, in 2.5 to 3 hours. Complete hand count. So that means, or we'll say 250 ballots. 250 ballots, 11 races, 2.5 to 3 hours. So then that means if you have 1,000 ballots, you need 4 tables if you want the results done by 10 o'clock. So for those 1,000 ballots, the 4 tables, you guys, on a precinct level, it's pretty doable. You could also become more efficient as well, to where, is there a possibility that we could adjust state law to say, we're going to start at 3 o'clock, whatever votes are in the box, we're going to go ahead and start those now. Then, when election night is done at 7 o'clock, the polls close, Then we'll take those round of ballots and give them to the tables and finish out the night. We've created laws to kind of impede our ability to get it done in a timely fashion. Some states even allow 16-year-olds, high schoolers, to be election judges. They could also count the ballots to be available. We somehow create state laws that basically say the election judges are going to be prisoners there all day, and now we expect them to count the ballots? No, it should be a separate team, you fools. Because now as people are getting home from work, they've had dinner, and if you're going to start counting at 8 o'clock, they could be well rested, come in, slam down a few ballots, and get this thing done. But no, we get in our own way and our own thoughts and make things impossible. There's little tweaks that we can do to open up the availability of people to come in and participate. All right. Go ahead and grab your tally sheet. Grab your beautiful blue pen. Okay, do you guys see the names across the top of that worksheet? So we have Janet, we have Daniel. If they didn't vote for that race, I'll just call out blank. If they wrote in a name, I'll just say write-in. And statistically, we just do write-in. We don't care what they wrote in, because statistically, in the United States, it's a 99% chance that write-in is not going to subdue another candidate that has a name printed on there. Okay? And then if they voted for too many candidates on that race, I'll call out overvote. Okay? So we see that there. And you'll just do a slash as I call these out. And then we're going to compare as we go along. So using that big, beautiful blue pen, the first candidate that you will mark is Janet. Second ballot, Janet. Daniel. Janet. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Janet. Okay, so we just went through 10 ballots. How many of you have 7 marks right now in blue for Janet? Raise your hands. How many of you have 3 marks for Daniel? Wow. Isn't that easy? I've just trained you. Okay, so we're going to continue with the blue pen, and we're going to keep going along. And so this is the beauty that if we were working together in a table, as kind of the table captain sitting here looking at the ballots, I'd want you guys to kind of table talk, and then some people develop their own methodology that at the tables, that when you guys would get to 5, 10, you might actually go, Janet 5, Janet 10, just to kind of calibrate with each other. Some tables do that when they get comfortable, just to kind of make sure that they're staying on pace. And then sometimes if they mishear something, they'll just stop and say, hey, what was that last ballot? I just want to confirm. And they'll even kind of stop the table and just kind of compare with each other. Hey, are we at 7 or 3? Now remember, we're doing 25 ballots here, and I stopped us at 10 just to confirm that we were on the same page. That's the beauty of being election judges at a table, because guess what? When it's all bipartisan oversight, the judges are going to ask any questions. Like, somebody wants to challenge what you guys did. Well, did the Democrat file a complaint? No. Did the Republican file a complaint? No. Judges don't like overruling other judges. That's why they call them election judges. That's why a lot of those cases are dismissed. If there's no written documentation of any evidence of fraud, judge isn't going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Okay? All right. So, continuing on with our big, beautiful blue pen. Next one is Janet. Daniel. Janet. Janet. Janet, Janet, Daniel, Janet, 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 Janet. Okay, now, how many of you have 20 votes for Janet? Raise your hands. How many of you have 5 votes for Daniel? Raise your hands. All right. So how do you feel right now? You can actually see that we just got done with 25 ballots, and you've got 20 there for Janet, 5 for Daniel. Then what you do to kind of keep track of where you're at is I would generally draw a line up and down right at the end of 20 on the outside of that box, and then also at 5 up and down. So that way I know that was the ending point of the first round of 25 ballots, right? So I can kind of mark it there. Now, this is where it gets really exciting. Red pen. And so as your table captain sitting here reviewing the ballots with the Democrat over here on the other side, the American flag here, we're reviewing these ballots and she doesn't see any issues with everything I'm doing. All right, so red pen. First one, Daniel.
Wait a minute. What did you say? We keep calling or?
You keep going from right where you left off. So that first red one for Daniel, you would be marking into slot number 6. Okay. So now on the second ballot, we would be marking Janet in red pen in slot number 21. Make sense for everybody? Okay. Next one, Janet. Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Now I could also start shortening the names to make it a little bit faster. Jan. 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 Now, because they're so close, I'm going to take control of this and go Daniel. Jan. 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 Daniel. Jan. Daniel. Jan. Daniel. Jan. 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 Daniel. Okay. So now for Janet, how many of you are at 37? Awesome. For Daniel, how many of you are at 13? Awesome. So then you would take your red pen and right after 37, draw your up and down line right at the end of 37 to kind of create that little end block there. And the same thing for Daniel at 13, creating your end block there. Everybody good so far? Okay, anybody off? Okay, where are you at?
I got 12 for Daniel.
Okay, and what does your table mate have? Okay, so one way to, so if we wanted to, we could go back and recount those 25, and let's do that as a team, where I'm going to go back through those ballots and we're going to do X's instead of a slash. So that's one way to correct it. Because you are both off, we would do it that way. If one of you was off and the other one was on, and you kind of calculated, well, I think I'm accurate and I don't have more than 25 ballots that we counted, I'm short one, I could just add it to that, or we could agree that we just want to go ahead and redo it. So let's just go ahead and redo it so that you can actually see what it's like to do an X with the red pen. Okay? So you would be, so that's why we drew that little blue line at the end, so we knew where we left off. So then we are converting these to X's. The first one is Daniel. Janet. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Janet. 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 Daniel. Janet. 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 Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Janet. 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 Daniel. Okay. How are we at now? Woohoo! See how easy it was to correct it? So we didn't have to like throw away a sheet or do anything like that. You know, this method has an ability to correct. And let's say we had to do it a third time. Instead of the slash to X, you fill in the whole box. Okay? Makes sense to everybody? Should we keep going and go to the blue pen? All right, so everybody's got the blue pen. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Janet. Janet. Daniel. Janet. 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 Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Daniel. Daniel. Janet. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Janet. Daniel. Janet. Janet. All right. Now, how many of you have 52 for Janet? Okay. How many of you have 23 for Daniel? Okay. Notice how I went faster? Because I had confidence in you of keeping up. So no, when we do one race at a time, you're creating that muscle memory of where those positions are within the ballot, that now we can actually increase and gain speed. Over the whole ballot and flipping sheets back and forth through the entire, we'd always be stuck in first gear. By doing it one race at a time, we start out in first gear, probably through the first 25 or 50 ballots, but then we're able to get into third and fourth gear beyond the 75th ballot. And you just experience that. So that gives you a little bit more confidence of, okay, this is how that works. This is how we can actually achieve that. So then go ahead and draw your little lines behind 52 in blue, and then for Janet, and then Daniel, 23 in blue. And so if we add those numbers together, that gives us 75, right? And so that's why we would pre-sort the ballots in blocks of 25 so that we're always building that confidence of like, okay, 75 ballots, these numbers work, okay, I'm good. I can now go to the next set of 25. Oh. All right. Now, here we go. Now, in this pack, just so that you're aware, I only have 83 ballots. That was the size of this precinct in Wisconsin. So I went a little easy on us. All right, the next one in red pen. First one is Janet, Janet, Daniel, 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 Janet, Janet, Daniel. And that is it. So hopefully we all have 56 for Janet and then 27 for Daniel. Yep. All right. Congratulations. You are now trained. That's how fast an election official could train people to understand how to do the counting of the ballots. Then they would spend, for the precinct captains, another 20 minutes on how to take the numbers that you would take from here. You don't even have to count the slashes. You just take number 56 and write that down here at the bottom for Janet. And then you take the number 27, write that down there at the bottom. And then for blank and no selections, that's a 0. Write-in is a 0. Overvote's a 0. And then that's just blank, so we just don't do anything there. And we can look at total ballots as 83. The total count is 83. We're good to go. That's how you're able to validate everything within that sheet. Then there's workbooks in the back of the binder, so you'll notice I have a blue and red binder on your tables with the stack of ballots. And at the back of those binders, there are total sheets that you take these totals and put it onto the summary sheets, and then you would give that to the precinct captain that then would use the last 4 sheets to summarize all of the tables and then deliver that with the ballots to the county clerk, who then the county clerk can log into the internet and type it into your statewide election night reporting system that your state uses to type in the election night results. And then they would seal these binders with the ballots as election material. And so there's 2 copies for every table, a Democrat and Republican binder. The binders are $1.25 each at the dollar store. These pens come in a 10-pack of each colors at Walmart for $1.59. This is a lot less cost. And remember, you download the Excel workbooks and you can create these little sheets here. And so the auditor could create these binders well before the election, because 60 days before the election, they know all the candidates. Definitely by 45 days, because they're already mailing out the military ballots. So there's plenty of time. And the beauty of this stuff requires no antivirus update, requires no Windows update, requires no logic and accuracy testing. It's actually less work, less stressful. We're not asking the auditors to count all the ballots. That's our job, the public. It's less work for them.
It'd be a whole lot simpler for the clerks.
That's right. What does that do to help change the attitude of how we look at election officials if we're working with them? What does that do to the parties when they're working together side by side to determine an election? At the end of it, they've worked together, they've built a relationship, and at the end of it, they should be able to shake hands and say, thank you for being here tonight. You and I can defend this election together. We were here, we witnessed this together. We did the work. It forces us to be together in a positive way. And when the public can stand here and actually sit on the side and follow along and observe it, it's a good thing. Now, some of the questions are, well, geez, if we're having all of these tables call it the same election at the same time, wouldn't that create confusion in the room? Oh yeah, it would. I've got a solution for that. As the room captain, I would say, you are going to start out on the first race and then continue through the rest of the ballot. The second table is going to start out on the second race. The third table is going to start on the third race. And then the fourth table is going to start on the fourth race. That way there's different callouts. Now, of course, it does get into issues when you get into ballot initiatives like yes, no. So then that's where I would do a follow-up that the first table, I hope the lady will call the election ballot names out. Second table, I'm going to ask the guy to do it, so that way when you are that close to each other, you'll be tuned in to listen to the female, you'll be listening to the male. Next table would be female, but you're further away that you wouldn't hear this female over here. So that's how you're able to constructively get it to work out. Okay? And of course, you can switch places at the table as you need. So if you find out that you just can't read the tally sheets, but you can look at a ballot, that's okay. Or if you have a little bit too much arthritis and it's hard for you to use the pen, but you can observe the ballot on the other side because you still have good eyesight, that's okay. You'll get through those floor dynamics. And of course, you should have extra substitutes here so that you can have a WWE match and do a little tap out and have them come in and substitute for you, whether you got a pee or you got a cramp or you have an emergency phone call. We make it too complicated. It doesn't have to be. On purpose.
The other sweet thing with this is if you're paying your election poll workers, you're paying your neighbor to count your ballots. You're not sending a bunch of money to some big corporation that's buying their machines from China.
And that's one of the most important points, is that when we are in an attitude that we want to keep our money local, investing in our own people to conduct these elections is actually more efficient, because when we talk about the dollars turned in local economies, why are we sending it to Colorado, to Dominion? Why are we sending it to Nebraska, to ES&S, when we can keep it right here in our own state of Wisconsin, in our own county of Polk County? So yeah, those are important value points as well. You know, and so having people here in the community that can stand up and say, I was part of the team that counted that election. I know what happened and there were no issues. Versus turning to ES&S and go, did you program it right? What's on line 5 of the source code? I don't know. You don't know. The auditor doesn't know.
We're not allowed to know.
Right. Except in Minnesota and in North Carolina, you can actually audit the source code. But why does your state not allow you to? That's a good question of the legislature.
It's proprietary.
Well, yes and no, but it's kind of an interesting argument that has cropped up. So I know I've kept you guys late and we didn't get through everything on the hand counting, but you guys okay with this so far? How many of you would love to do hand counting now that you've experienced it this way? Raise your hands. Great. Okay, party leaders, get their names, and that's your list to bring to the county auditor, say, we're ready to go. Yes.
This is time for a commercial. We need to pay for your gas.
Yes.
So anything you can do.
Table so that the public could see the ballots and hear how we're counting them. And most counties are using a Microsoft Office suite, and Microsoft Teams comes with that suite. And so they could already use the software that they already pay for to do a live stream of it, and then save that recording and make it available on YouTube. So,
Just examples, and you want them back, right?
Yep. But the sheets that you have right now, go ahead and take those. And I do have some other sheets that are available where we actually have the layout for a call 3 race as well. So like a school board race, you know, how would you do that? And so you call all 3 candidates for that race at the same time. And then if there's an undervote, you say that there's 1 undervote, or if they didn't have any votes at all, you would just say 3 undervotes. So that way you keep your numbers in alignment in there. Okay. Any other questions? Yep.
Is this video something we're gonna be able to get a hold of?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be on YouTube, and then I will send the link to the Northwest Wisconsin Patriots group, and they'll take and put it on Rumble and whatever other platforms
We're on Rumble, yeah.
Yep.
that they might use.
Thank you for doing that.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Give me about a week.
Okay.
Very good, thanks.
I like to say that because it probably won't take that long.
Under promise and over deliver.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, feel free to donate to Midwest Swamp Watch or to the U.S. Council. I don't make any money off of this. All of the research goes to either buying equipment, whatever I can find on eBay, county sites, state sites, et cetera, so I can research that equipment. And then also it goes towards developing the hand count process. So like buying these. Oh, I forgot to tell you a secret. How many of you have seen Vindicating Trump? Okay, go see that movie because I'm in there. And I talk about how I bought 10,000 ballots. And oh, by the way, the ballots that you're using right now, that's actually ES&S paper. So you've just seen, so those little folders on your desk, that's the actual ballot paper. So our elections aren't secure, by the way. So we just did a hand count together using their ballots. When you do an in-person vote, 2 judges sign it on the back or initial it. But when it's an absentee ballot, only 1 person does. And it's typically your municipal clerk or deputy clerk. They're the only ones. Now, everybody's a partisan, let's just be honest, okay? And so I believe that should actually go to a ballot board, and they should actually both initial it, a Republican and a Democrat. So that's one level of security. Now, watermarks, you can actually have different types of, like on your $5 bill, $10 bill, there are watermarks that are there, and then the $100 bill has an inlay in it that can be used, that could be done. I think each of those levels help, but I also believe that the county, once they receive a printed batch of ballots from the vendor, whoever they're using, I believe they should use some kind of a county seal that they would imprint into the ballot. Not just a stamp, but I like those imprint ones that a lot of the counties have, and I would rather see that in there so that you would have 3 levels. Whatever paper security to identify that this is unique from the vendor, then the county receiving them and then putting their embossed print on it, then also having the election judges initially. I believe that all 3 should be there as part of ballot security. So that way me, who's able to go buy ES&S paper, would be missing the county stamp and the election judge signature. Yeah, you bet. Good question. So, thank you, everybody.